I have sat on this bench for over 4 decades. I've looked into the eyes of hardened criminals, desperate mothers, and kids who made one stupid mistake. I thought I understood the ceiling of human arrogance. I thought I'd seen every version of someone convinced they were above the law. I was wrong. Nothing prepared me for case number 29, CR 881, the file that landed on my docket last Tuesday. Most people who walk into my courtroom carry at least a flicker of fear or a little respect for the flag behind me. Not this one. On a rainy October morning, a young man walked in who didn't just think he was innocent, he thought he owned the building. If you believe no piece of paper, no family name, and no foreign title should ever give someone the right to spit on a police officer, hit subscribe right now, because this story is going to make your blood boil long before it makes you cheer. The room was unusually quiet that morning. My bailiff Miller looked tense. The air felt heavy. Sergeant Thomas Ali sat in the front row, 58 years old, 3 months from retirement, the kind of officer who coaches Little League and carries groceries for elderly neighbors. He wasn't in uniform. He sat in plain clothes, tired, smaller than I remembered him, a bandage on his cheek. The real wound wasn't the bandage. It was in his eyes, the look of a man stripped of his dignity. Then the door swung open, and in walked the defendant, Julian Alpha, 22, in a suit worth more than Sergeant Ali's annual pension. He didn't walk in, he strutted, chewing gum, scrolling his phone, laughing at something on the screen. No glance at the flag, no glance at the officer he'd assaulted. 2 attorneys trailed behind him like he was a head of state. He leaned against the defense table, checked his watch, and sighed like my courtroom was a dentist's waiting room. I opened the file. 5 pages. My stomach turned reading the first paragraph. 11:45 p.m. Saturday. A McLaren P1 clocked at 110 in a 35 zone. Subject refused to stop. Mr. Alpha, I said, calm but sharp, remove the gum. Stand up straight. You're in a court of law. He looked at me, not with fear, with genuine confusion, like a king being addressed by a servant. He pulled the gum out, stuck it under my bench, and smirked. Judge, let's make this quick. My father's waiting. Lunch reservation. Just name the fine so my lawyers can write the check. He glanced at Sergeant Ali. Or talk to them. I don't speak to public servants. Dead silence. You're charged with reckless driving, evading arrest, and assault on a police officer, I said. This isn't a parking ticket. This is a felony. He laughed, cold and dry, and turned to his lead attorney. Show him the card, Charles. Show him why he can't touch me. The lawyer placed a laminated card on my bench, a diplomatic seal stamped across it. Your Honor, with respect, my client holds diplomatic immunity under the Vienna Convention. His father is the deputy ambassador. This court has no jurisdiction. Julian winked at me. You work for the city, Judge. My father owns it. Are we done? I'm bored. The card looked legitimate. The lawyer cited the Diplomatic Relations Act of 1978 like he was reading it off a teleprompter. Absolute immunity, he said. Can't arrest, can't fine, can't even detain. Julian stood, buttoning his jacket. Come on, Charles. Reservations at 12:30. I want the window seat. Sit down. My voice cracked across the room. Even the court reporter jumped. Julian froze. Did you not hear my lawyer? You have no authority here. Sit down. I let my voice drop into the register my regulars know means trouble. You may have a card claiming immunity, Mr. Alpha. We'll get to that. But this is still my courtroom, and in my courtroom, we hear the facts before we dismiss anything. He rolled his eyes hard enough that I thought they'd get stuck, and sat. Counselor, I said to the prosecutor, before we discuss treaties, I want to know exactly what happened Saturday night. What did this untouchable young man actually do? She stood and began to read, and the room shifted from tense to outraged. Sergeant Ali had pursued the vehicle 3 miles. When it finally stopped, the window came down an inch. Ali asked for a license. The defendant shouted a threat about his father and threw a lit cigarette at the officer. A gasp moved through the gallery. Julian chuckled, tapping his phone. Sergeant Ali remained professional, she continued. He asked the defendant to step out, smelled alcohol. The defendant refused. When Ali reached for the door handle, the window came down and the defendant spit directly in his face. The courtroom erupted. I looked at Sergeant Ali, a 30-year veteran who'd faced armed robbers, delivered babies in the back of a patrol car, sitting there with his hands clenched white in his lap, humiliated by a kid half his age. And then he laughed, the prosecutor said, voice shaking, told the officer, "That's all you're worth. Wipe it off and let me go." Julian looked straight at me and smiled. "He touched my car," Julian interrupted, not even standing. "It's a P1. You don't touch the paint. He deserved it. Where I'm from, he'd be whipped for touching royal property." "This is not your country," I said, voice tight. "He's a peasant. I'm a diplomat. You're the son of one." Same thing. Are we done with story time? So I spit on him. "I'll pay his dry cleaning." He pulled a wad of hundreds from his pocket and tossed them onto the floor near Ali's boots. "Buy a new uniform. Keep the change." Ali didn't move, didn't look at the money, just closed his eyes. That was the moment I knew this young man wasn't walking out of my courtroom that day. I didn't care about the card. I didn't care about the Vienna Convention. I didn't care if it started an international incident. "Your Honor," the lawyer said quickly, sensing the shift, "while my client's behavior is regrettable, the law is clear. Article 31, complete immunity. You must dismiss." "Regrettable is spilling coffee, counselor," I said softly. "This is something else." I picked the card back up, turned it over, and remembered a loophole most attorneys forget because they're too busy staring at the seal. I checked the date of birth on the police report against the date of issuance on the card. A slow smile spread across my face. "Mr. Alpha, you seem very confident you're untouchable." "I don't just seem it, I am it." "Let's test that theory." Charles straightened his tie. A bead of sweat slid down his temple, the instinct of a lawyer who's just realized he's standing in a minefield. "Your Honor, there's nothing to test. The State Department issued that card, valid through 2026. My client is the son of a diplomat, and under the Vienna Convention, family members hold the same immunities as the diplomatic agent." "That's the general rule," I said. "Rules have exceptions, counselor, and federal regulations have fine print." I held up the card. "Mr. Alpha is 22, correct? And currently residing here with his father. Is he a full-time student?" The question hung like a blade. Charles froze mid-sentence. I believe school?" Julian cut in, rolling his eyes. "I don't do school. Harvard for a semester? Boring. They expected me to read books. I dropped out 6 months ago to focus on my brand. Why does it matter?" I smiled, genuinely and icily. "It matters, Mr. Alpha, because of Article 37 of the Vienna Convention combined with State Department dependent regulations." I opened the law book I keep for exactly this moment and let the silence stretch. Diplomatic immunity for a diplomat's child ends on their 21st birthday unless they're a full-time student at an accredited institution, in which case it extends to 23. I closed the book. "You are 22. You just admitted on the record in open court that you are not a student. You dropped out 6 months ago." The color drained from Charles's face. He started flipping frantically through his papers. "Wait, Your Honor, there must be a grace period. The State Department—" 30 days, I cut him off. "It's been 6 months. As of this second, Mr. Alpha is not a diplomat, not a dependent. He is an unemployed 22-year-old on an expired visa who assaulted a police officer in my city." Julian's smirk vanished for the first time. Real fear flickered in his eyes. "Charles, fix this. Fix it now." "I didn't strip him of anything," I said calmly. "He stripped himself the moment he decided he was too important for rules." I dropped the laminated card in the trash can beside my chair. "Your client has no more rights than the man he spit on." I turned to the bailiff. "Officer Miller, secure the doors. Nobody leaves." Julian shot to his feet, knocking his chair over. "You can't do this. My father will burn this whole courthouse down. Do you know who my family is?" "And I'm the judge," I said, my voice filling the chamber. "In this room, you don't give orders, you take them." I turned to Sergeant Ali. The despair in his eyes had been replaced by something close to hope. "Counselor, since the defendant no longer enjoys diplomatic protection, are you prepared to amend the charges?" "Yes, Your Honor. The people moved to revoke bail given the defendant's flight risk, access to foreign resources, and lack of legal status. We ask he be remanded to custody pending trial. Custody? Julian's voice cracked into something high and panicked. A boy who'd never once been told no. Jail? With them? Charles, throw money at them. Mr. Alpha, I said, you threw money at an officer of the law. You thought a title made you better than the man protecting this community. Welcome to the American justice system. It's not perfect, but today it works. I raised the gavel. Bail is denied. The defendant is remanded to county jail.
He didn't go quietly. He looked at the bailiff approaching with cuffs, looked at the exit, and did the single dumbest thing imaginable in a room full of armed bailiffs. He ran, scrambled over the defense table, expensive shoes slipping on the polished floor. Don't touch me, I'm royalty. It was the most pathetic thing I'd witnessed in decades on this bench. Bailiff Miller, a former college linebacker, didn't even bother running. 2 steps, one hand on the back of Julian's jacket, and his feet actually left the floor. Get off me! My father will have you executed. Stop resisting, Miller said, knee against the small of his back. Hands! I will not, I'm a diplomat. Click, click. The handcuffs closed. For the first time in his life, Julian Alpha was physically restrained. He couldn't buy his way out. He couldn't talk his way out. Mr. Alpha, I said, you're in contempt of court. 6 more months added to your potential sentence. I'd stop talking before you talk yourself into a federal penitentiary. His lip trembled. The bravado was gone. But I have a reservation. I can't go to jail. I have lunch. A murmur of disbelief moved through the gallery. Officer Miller, process him. Fingerprints, mugshot, and get him into a jumpsuit. I want him looking like what he is. And that's when the main doors exploded open. 2 men in dark suits with earpieces came in first, private security. Between them walked a man who looked like an older, colder version of Julian. Tall, silver-haired, eyes like stones. Stop. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried enough weight to freeze the room. Father, help me. The man walked down the aisle like someone who'd shaken hands with dictators, ignored the gallery, and pointed a finger at me. I am Ambassador Alpha. You are holding my son. Release him in the next 30 seconds, or you will not be a judge by dinner time. I folded my hands and looked at him. Ambassador, you seem to have forgotten where you are. I'm on American soil, and I have friends in your State Department who owe me favors. That may be true. Right now, you're interrupting my court. I looked past him. Miller, take the prisoner away. You dare defy me? The door to the holding cells clicked shut. Julian was gone. Only his sobbing echoed after him. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was a fuse burning toward dynamite. You've made a mistake that will cost you everything, the ambassador said, barely above a whisper, and it still carried to the back of the room. You've kidnapped a foreign national. This is an act of aggression. It's an arrest, Ambassador, based on probable cause and revoked visa status. I'd lower your tone. You're a guest in this country and currently a guest in my courtroom. He laughed and pulled a gold-plated phone from his jacket. I am not a guest. I am a power, and I'm about to make one call that ends your career, releases my son, and gets this officer fired before sundown. He started dialing. Mr. Ambassador, put the phone away. Electronic devices are prohibited in session. He ignored me completely, eyes locked on mine, pure arrogance. 2 private security men loomed behind him, jackets bulging with what were clearly firearms. This was the moment. If I backed down, the law meant nothing. Deputy, seize the phone. The security guard stepped forward, hands drifting toward their chests. The gallery ducked. Step back, the deputy barked, hand on his own holster. I stood. Didn't bang the gavel, just stood to my full height. Listen carefully, I said to the guards. You're private contractors. 0 jurisdiction here. If you so much as twitch toward a weapon, you're looking at felony obstruction and an armed threat against a court officer. 20 years. Is your paycheck worth that? They looked at the ambassador, looked at the deputies now flanking the room, and did the math. They stepped back. Cowards, the ambassador hissed at them. Deputy Dem, the phone. The deputy plucked the gold phone right out of the ambassador's hand. He stared at his empty palm like he'd never once in 30 years been told no. This is an outrage. I have immunity. You cannot touch my property.
You have immunity, I agreed, but you're disrupting a legal proceeding, and while you can't be arrested, you can be expelled. Keep threatening my staff, and I'll find right now that you're a danger to this court.
He straightened his jacket, regaining his composure. Very well. Keep the phone. I don't need it to destroy you. My lawyers are already filing a writ of habeas corpus. My son will be out within the hour, and you'll be under investigation by morning. He turned to leave, then stopped, eyes landing on Sergeant Ali. And you think you won? I'll sue you for every penny. I'll make sure your grandchildren are paying off your debts. Ali didn't flinch. I brought the gavel down so hard the handle cracked. That is enough. Get out of my courtroom. He smiled, cruel and satisfied, certain he'd landed the final blow, and marched out, security trailing behind him like whipped dogs. If you're enjoying watching entitlement crash headfirst into consequences, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because what happens in the next few minutes is the part nobody saw coming. Sergeant, I said softly. Ali looked up. Don't worry about his threats. With respect, Judge, he said, tired. He's not just blowing smoke. He's powerful. Maybe I should have just let the kid go. It broke something in me, hearing a 30-year veteran wonder if doing his job had been a mistake because the criminal was rich. It was worth it, Tom, I said, because it was right. I adjourned for recess and walked back to chambers, hands shaking. I sat at my desk, staring at the cracked gavel, wondering if I'd just ended my career. Then my personal cell rang. Unknown number. Judge, this is Special Agent Miller, FBI. Don't hang up. We need to talk about the Alpha family. The FBI? Are you investigating the son? No, we've been investigating the father for 2 years, and you just forced his hand. I gripped the phone. I'm a traffic court judge, Agent. I'm dealing with a spoiled kid who was speeding. You're dealing with a lot more than that. We've tracked Ambassador Alpha for 24 months. He's not just a diplomat, he's a conduit. He uses his diplomatic pouch, which we can't search, to move assets for enemies of the state. A chill ran through me. I looked at the gold phone I'd seized minutes earlier. The phone, I whispered. Exactly. We believe it holds encrypted keys to offshore accounts and communication logs with his buyers. Why do you think he panicked over a cell phone? It's not privacy, Your Honor. It's evidence. He paused. He's filing a writ. He'll come back with a federal order to release his son and return the phone. He's fast. He's got judges in his pocket. We're 10 minutes out, mobilizing a tactical team. Do not give that phone back, and do not let him leave the building. 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, he could have my badge. Hold the line, Judge. Just hold the line. The call dropped. A knock. My bailiff, pale. Judge, he's back, and he brought company. I took a breath, slipped the phone into my robe pocket against my chest, grabbed a spare gavel, and stood. Let's go. Back in the courtroom, the air had shifted from tense to suffocating. Standing at the center was the ambassador, and beside him, a man I recognized instantly, the most expensive, most ruthless defense attorney in the state, the kind who gets murderers off on technicalities. A writ of habeas corpus, he said, slapping the paper on my bench, signed by a federal judge 10 minutes ago. It orders the immediate release of Julian Alpha and the return of all seized property, specifically my client's phone. Fail to comply within 5 minutes, and federal marshals are authorized to arrest you for contempt and obstruction. The ambassador stood behind him, arms crossed, triumphant. I glanced at the clock. 8 minutes until the FBI arrived. Impressive document, counselor. It's a court order. Release the boy. Give us the phone. I will comply with the federal order, I said slowly, stalling. However, there's a procedural issue. There is no procedural issue, the ambassador shouted. Stop playing games. The prisoner is currently being processed. You know how bureaucracy is. You have 2 minutes, the attorney said, checking his watch, or I call the marshals. And regarding the phone, I'm afraid I can't return it just yet, I said, tapping my chest where it burned against my ribs. Why not? Is it lost? Did you steal it? No, it's been entered into evidence. Evidence for what? The attorney laughed. A traffic violation? You don't need a phone for a speeding ticket. Not for the traffic violation, I said softly. The room went quiet. The ambassador's eyes narrowed.
He sensed the wind shifting. Then for what? I checked the clock. 4 minutes. Mr. Ambassador, do you believe in karma?
I believe in power, and you've run out of yours. Give me the phone, or I'll destroy your life. You keep threatening to destroy me, I said, but you haven't asked why I really seized it. You assume it was because you were rude, but maybe, just maybe, I saw something on that screen while you were waving it around. A bluff. I needed him talking, not watching the door. He went pale. You saw nothing. I saw enough, I lied. Numbers, accounts, names. He lunged, hands slamming on the bench, inches from my face. You are a lying, insignificant little... Control your client, I said calmly. He's assaulting a judge. Give him the phone, the attorney shouted at me, realizing his client was unraveling. I can't, it's not my case anymore. What are you talking about? Whose case is it? At that exact second, the main doors flew open. Not marshals coming for me, a wave of blue windbreakers with yellow letters. FBI. Agent Miller walked in first, a dozen agents behind him. It's my case now, he announced. The ambassador turned slowly. Agents, judge, lawyer, and the attorney did exactly what a lawyer like him does in a moment like that. He stepped away from his client. Ambassador Alpha, Agent Miller said, walking down the aisle, step away from the bench. You cannot touch me. I have immunity. I have a writ. I am a diplomat. Miller reached into his jacket, not for a weapon, for a different piece of paper. Your immunity was revoked 10 minutes ago by the Secretary of State. Turns out the U.S. government doesn't love it when their guests run arms deals on our soil. The ambassador's knees buckled. He grabbed the defense table to stay upright. I stood, reached into my robe, and pulled out the gold phone. Agent Miller, I believe this belongs to you. He took it with a nod, sealed it into an evidence bag. The plastic crinkling in that silent room was the sound of an empire ending. Ambassador? You're under arrest for conspiracy to traffic illegal arms, money laundering, and acting as an unregistered agent of a foreign power. He didn't scream like his son. He just stood there, mouth opening and closing, the arrogance replaced by a terrifying emptiness. Richard, do something. Call the president. Fix this. The attorney looked at the agents, looked at the charges, and snapped his briefcase shut. I'm sorry, Ambassador. My firm doesn't handle treason cases. Conflict of interest. You'll need a public defender. And he walked straight out of the courtroom. The ambassador turned back to me. Judge, please, I didn't mean what I said. The heat of the moment. I'm a father. Surely you understand a father fighting for his son. I understand a father teaching his son responsibility, I said. You taught him he was untouchable. Now you're both learning you're just men. Turn around, Miller ordered. An agent spun him hard. Click, click. The same sound that had ended his son's freedom now ended his. This is a mistake, the ambassador whispered, head down. I am important. Not anymore, Miller said. Take him away. As they marched him past the front row, past Sergeant Ali, the ambassador kept his eyes on the floor. Ali stood up, didn't say a word, didn't gloat, just stood there, bandaged face held high, watching the man who threatened his pension get led away in chains. The powerful man stripped bare, the humble man keeping his dignity. As the doors closed behind the agents, the whole room seemed to exhale. I looked at the cracked gavel on my desk, hands still shaking. Sergeant Ali, I called. He walked up. You don't have to say anything, Tom, but we still have your assault case. He'll be processed and handed to federal custody alongside his father. The charges stick. I'm binding assault and reckless driving over to the grand jury. Given the flight risk and the fact that his diplomatic protection just evaporated, I'm setting new bail. I picked up my pen. $5 million, cash only. And since his father's assets are about to be frozen, I don't think he's making that lunch reservation anytime soon. A small laugh moved through the courtroom. Ali smiled, a real one. Thank you, Judge, for having my back. When he pulled that card, when his father walked in, I thought it was over. The system bends, Tom, I said. Rich people push it. Powerful people twist it. But as long as I'm sitting in this chair, it does not break. I looked at the gallery. 15-minute recess. I need to call my wife and tell her I might be late for dinner. And I need a new gavel. Everyone laughed, a collective release.
But walking back to chambers, past the empty defense table where the Alpha family's arrogance had finally met its end, I thought about the real lesson. It wasn't just about catching a criminal. It was about the moment the ambassador realized his money couldn't buy the one thing that mattered right then, his freedom. There was a knock at my office door, not my bailiff, Sergeant Ali, holding a small box. "Judge, I know you're on recess, but the guys wanted me to give you this." Inside was a standard issue police patch. On the back, handwritten in Sharpie, "For holding the line." For the first time that day, I felt tears prick my eyes. "We don't forget, Judge," he said. "You stood up for the little guy today. That matters." "It's the job, Tom," I said, voice thick. "No," he said, shaking his head. "Today, it was more than a job." It's been 6 months since the Alpha dynasty crumbled in my courtroom. 6 months since a young man tried to run from justice and his father tried to buy it out. A lot has changed. Julian never made it to that lunch. He spent 3 months in county jail awaiting trial without his father's money to shield him. He lost weight, stopped slicking back his hair, learned fast that inside a cell, nobody cares about your last name, only your respect. Eventually, he took a plea deal, guilty on assault and reckless endangerment. 3 years in a federal facility, followed by deportation. He's serving that time now in a medium security prison in Pennsylvania. I got a letter from him last week, short, handwritten on cheap lined paper. "Judge, I hated you that day, but looking back, you were the only person who ever told me no. It might have saved my life." The ambassador's fall was harder. The gold phone was a treasure trove for the FBI, a network of illegal arms deals and money laundering across 3 continents, 24 federal counts, immunity permanently revoked, assets frozen. The man who thought he owned the city is facing 20 years in a federal supermax, from shaking hands with presidents to talking through bulletproof glass. Sergeant Ali retired last month. I was at his party. He looked 10 years younger, introduced me to his grandkids, told me that for the first time in a long time, he felt proud of the badge he'd worn for 30 years, like the system had actually worked. But this story was never just about them. It's about the lie we're told every day, that if you have enough money, enough followers, or the right last name, the rules don't apply to you. We see it everywhere, and it makes us cynical, makes justice feel like a fairy tale. It isn't. It's a choice. Every time we stand up to a bully, even scared, we choose justice. Every time we refuse to let someone cut the line because they're rich, we choose fairness. Every time we treat a janitor with the same respect as a CEO, we choose humanity. That day, the ambassador had money, power, and connections. Sergeant Ali had the truth, and the truth won. If you made it through the whole rise and fall of Julian Alpha, you already know why this channel exists. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this with someone who needs the reminder that justice is still alive. We're just getting started. Got a story like this? Ever dealt with someone who thought their status made them better than you? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. Next week's case will make this one look like a warm-up. A landlord who cut the heat in a building full of elderly veterans in the dead of winter, figuring nobody would care. He was wrong. He ended up in my courtroom, and by the time I was done with him, he was sweating. You don't want to miss it. This is my courtroom, where the only currency that matters is the truth.